Wow. Showtime Shawn Porter sends a very direct message to Terence Crawford, says, "You're welcome over at the PBC, but we don't need you." And he gives a Monopoly board, the game analogy to kind of compare things and let Terence Crawford know, a little thing about the business and leverage. We're going to talk about all that and more. Stay tuned to this video. Please smash the like button. I'll be back.
You've played Monopoly with me before, and you know that when I get these properties, I'm looking at you and I'm about to squeeze you for everything you got. I'm about to squeeze you for everything you got. And that's what's going on right now with Terence Crawford. You want to come over here? Yeah, I kind of need you. We kind of need to make a trade, but who needs who more? And until you recognize that you need me more and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get over here and get these fights, then it's not going to happen. And I think that that's what's happening right now. And I'm not saying that AH is actually squeezing him and making it so that he feels vulnerable and has to come over, but he's like, hey, listen, I got a room full of buddies. You know what I mean? I don't need any more buddies. I wouldn't mind that buddy, but I don't need any more. And so because I don't need any more, I'm gonna continue to move the way we move and get down the way we get down. It's still big fights to be had right here. And if you're not willing to get down with us, I'm not gonna come looking for you. I'll wait for you to come looking for me.
Yo, what up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We work in Cash App, $Boxingego. So appreciate you guys for all the support. It's been great and phenomenal. Let's talk about it. You guys heard Shawn Porter. He did an interview with Ak and Barack, and he basically had a pretty direct message to Terence Crawford. As we know, Terence Crawford, he says he's looking for the big fights. He has his sights set on Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao. We don't know if that'll be next. Errol Spence continues to do the heavy lifting. And, he got in a wreck, came back, fought a top guy. Danny Garcia looked sharp in that fight. And we don't know what's next for Terence Crawford because basically what I've told you on the channel, the names align with Top Rank, Crawford's current promoter, just don't have the resume of names in the talent pool like PBC. So you heard Shawn Porter spitting some real facts. And he says, bro, we don't need you. You could come. Yeah, we could always have some extra people, but we have enough people aligned with us in this talent pool, in this division, to make very interesting fights, he's basically saying. I'm just paraphrasing because you guys heard the clip at the beginning. We have so many talented fighters. We can round robin these guys. We can mix and match the guys. And he says, I'm not saying AH, obviously referring to Al Haymon. I'm not saying he's trying to squeeze Crawford out, but at the end of the day, we got a full house we're working with and many different ways. You know, Jose Cito Lopez, he's due for a big fight. He's been looking good. He just retired 2 people in a row. Chia Santana on the Errol Spence, Danny Garcia card. And before that, John Molina, who later became a sheriff. Shout out to him. That's my guy. So Jose Cito, he's due for a big fight. Berto is somebody who's been with PBC since the beginning, so I'm sure he's in the loop. Obviously, the names that have been doing great, like Errol Spence and Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman, who lost to Pacquiao, but he's still in the loop. He, you know, one loss is not gonna. People lose. You know, it is what it is. One loss is not gonna define you, and then, you know, just remove you from like existence and relevancy. So I agree with Shawn Porter 1,000%. The bottom line is everybody seems to see it except for Crawford. And the reason I say except for Crawford is because Team Crawford, they continue to say and suggest things that, you know, rival what Shawn Porter and myself is saying. And Ego Stradamus strikes again. This keeps happening in the world of boxing where I tell you stuff and I'm the first one to say it because I'm unique in my thoughts, and I just put it out and I make videos on the fly as it's relevant to boxing. And I say these things, and then you hear professional fighters, professional trainers, and people in this industry, promoter, whatever, and they later say what I've told you on the channel. Terence Crawford, this is not a battle of, like, Crawford has to swallow his pride almost. It's not a battle of if you're a good fighter. This is not a battle of if you're skilled. Nobody's taking away your past accomplishments. But in the here and now, at welterweight division, you haven't done what these other guys, Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, have done, which is fight each other, which everybody believes these are the top and hardest guys. And Keith Thurman even fought a Hall of Famer in Pacquiao, who no one else has got to out of those other names that I just mentioned. Meanwhile, Crawford is fighting Mean Machine, his mandatory. Now Shawn Porter's is mandatory, and his promoter is saying that it is not a big enough fight. Right here. Yesterday, there was an interview conducted with Bob Arum with The Athletic, and he says, regarding Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter, Arum isn't sold, the article says. Quote from Bob Arum, Terence Crawford's promoter: a great fight, Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter. It's a great fight, but it's not a big fight. It's not a fight that really piques the imagination of sports fans like Crawford Spence. So anything else less than Crawford Spence is anticlimactic, just like Garcia and Spence was. So he found a way to hate on Garcia Spence. I paid $75 for it, and I enjoyed the card, so I don't know what Arum's even talking about, right? And Team Crawford continues to put out messages like this. This is a statement made from Crawford recently, right? In which Crawford says, the Errol Spence fight, if it ain't 60-40 in my favor, it won't happen. So these statements, as you guys can hear and see and read, they sound delusional because it sounds like a team that believes they're in charge or have the business leverage. You know, oh, we don't want to fight Porter, even though he's our mandatory, because it's a great fight, but not a big fight. But beggars can't be choosers. You know, there's another article from Crawford. Crawford says the Spence fight is not important. I don't need him for my legacy. Errol Spence needs me. But while Terence Crawford is suggesting this, the fans don't believe it. You went to Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia fight in Texas. Terence Crawford is not from Texas. So he had to actually take a trip to go to Errol Spence's fight. So you packed a bag and, you know, flew to Errol Spence's joint and went to watch what you felt was obviously a good fight. Otherwise, if that wasn't the case, then why would you go to it? But you're putting stuff out there that I'm the A side, not Spence. You know, Bomac said it, Crawford said it. You know, if it ain't 60-40 with me getting the lion's share, the fight won't happen. How is that going to be the case when he's putting up better numbers than you? He's outselling you both in the viewership department and also attendance. Errol Spence's last fight with Danny Garcia did over 16,000 in the crowd. Meanwhile, Terence Crawford versus Kell Brook, his very last fight, had no crowd. That's the arrangement your promotion made. You know, it was in the bubble. They didn't put in a state that is accepting crowds right now during this pandemic, and there was no crowd. But Errol Spence is still showing you he can sell tickets, and they're not just keeping him in Texas. Yeah, he's done great numbers in Texas, but I went to his fight at the Staples Center, and that still has 16,000 people in L.A., and we know he's not from L.A. So it's just becoming harder and harder for Team Crawford to pacify these claims. You know, the Spence fight is not important. But again, you went to his fight. You went to his fight in his backyard to watch him fight Danny Garcia. And before the fight, Terence Crawford did an Instagram Live on Fight Week, which you guys have all probably seen if you're a diehard boxing fan. And he said it's a 50-50 fight. Danny's no slouch. I've known Danny since we were Yea I, since we were kids, and Danny could fight his ass off. This is what Crawford said. So seeing how Spence took apart Danny Garcia and had his face looking really bad and beat him worse than anybody coming off an accident, then indirectly, based on your own statements, you've made Errol Spence the man. You made him the man because people are looking at it like even great fighters like Terence Crawford thought this was going to be a tough fight, and Errol Spence made it look easy. Now you have a guy like Shawn Porter, very respected, who's your mandatory, and your promoter saying, nah, we don't want Shawn. Great fight. It's not big enough. But how could your promoter or your team say Shawn Porter's not big enough, but I'm a paying patron? I would pay for Crawford and Porter. Plus, that satisfies your mandatory. How can you fight Aegis Kavalaskis, Mean Machine, and he's your mandatory? And that was big enough to allow it to happen, but then starve the fans of a Porter fight, and he just called you out. And he says, I'm down to fight Terence Crawford. It's a great fight. He said, I actually prefer it to Errol Spence. I'll fight Errol Spence too. But the reason I prefer it is because it's a storyline that hasn't been explored. I already fought Errol Spence. You guys seen how it happened. You know, we can work on adjustments. But in the end of the day, I like the fight because he said Terence Crawford is a brand new storyline and we don't know what will happen, and it's still a title fight. So Shawn Porter already called you out, plus he's your mandatory, you know, and you have Crawford, who is basically just suggesting that he's like kind of in a position of power, and I just don't see it that way. You know, I haven't had anyone explain to me how Crawford has any of the leverage. Shawn Porter just told you at the beginning clip. He says, yeah, you know, we could take more people, but we have a lot of people in this playground. We got a lot of buddies that want smoke. We got a good thing going. You could come join us, but we're not going to go looking for you. We don't have to. We got a lot of great fights that the fans are desiring. And I don't know who's told Terence Crawford or advised him that his past accomplishments would hold up to the point where it gives him the leverage. Like, I get it. Crawford is a great fighter who's climbed up in weight, and he's been undisputed, which is something Errol, Shawn, other people can't say that they've done. But what they can say they have done is fought the best in the world. People still have those questions about Crawford. Has he fought the best in the world, especially at welterweight? So I still see it the same way. Obviously, Shawn Porter agrees with what I've been telling you. He just told you, you know, you could come join us, and that's kind of where it's at. And it goes deeper than this, and I've already explored a lot of these other alternative points, like the whole angle of Bob Arum disrespecting Crawford and throwing him under the bus. You know, that's a real thing, saying that I could have bought a house in Beverly Hills with the amount of money I'm losing on Crawford. All in all, it's just not a good look, and it doesn't give Terence Crawford the leverage that he needs to demand only Pacquiao or only Errol Spence. It's like you go to a restaurant. You go to a restaurant and you say, oh, I'll take the soup of the day and the filet mignon. And if they don't have the soup of the day and they're out of filet mignon, then you got to pick something else off the menu. You know, you can't force them to have that. You know, I'll take the fish of the day, the swordfish. They say, hey, we ran out. You know, the filet mignon, oh, we stopped serving that at 8 p.m., you know, and you came here right before closing. And when you can't force them to have that for you. So if you're hungry and you're at the restaurant, then you pick something else off the menu. It's just like a kid. You know, you ever have a finicky kid and they don't know what they want off the menu and they're just looking and perusing and you're like, come on, pick. You know, we're in the drive-thru. Like, you got to pick what you want so we could get out of here and the cars behind us can order and boom, boom, boom. And that's Terence Crawford. He's made it clear that he wants two guys, Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao has 70-plus fights. He's the A-side. Crawford is not the A-side over Errol Spence either. So against two A-side guys, you might not be able to get that. So what are you going to do? Keep fighting Kell Brooks, you know, and mean machines of the world, or go after other great fights? You know, it just, like I said, it's like a little kid in the drive-thru. Doesn't want to pick what they want. Come on, we at McDonald's. What do you want? You want a cheeseburger? You want nuggets? Yeah. You want fries? Like, what do you want? You know, and that's how I think boxing fans are getting. You can't control Pacquiao. He's a boss and a legend in the game. He might fight more lucrative fights with Errol Spence, Conor McGregor, or Mikey Garcia, all more lucrative because these guys have been branded better than Crawford, right? So we don't know what happens there. So you can't just hold out all your hopes. And the bottom line is this. For Bob Arum to say that Shawn Porter is a great fight but not a big fight, then that would stipulate that you've been fighting guys that are all better than Shawn Porter. You see what I'm saying? Because if Shawn Porter ain't big enough of a fight for you to make, so you're telling me that Mean Machine and Amir Khan at the time Crawford fought him, those were colossal fights, right? Jeff Horn, when a lot of people thought he robbed Pacquiao, that was a colossal fight. Jose Benavidez, after he only had 2 fights at like 27 months and got shot in the leg, that was a colossal fight. I mean, you can't disrespect Shawn in that way. You could do whatever you want in this world, but no one's going to believe it. We all know Shawn is a top guy. He's calling your name. He wants it. So if you can't get the other fights, Shawn, listen, nobody's asking Crawford to do anything that the PBC guys aren't doing, period. Errol Spence, post-accident, he didn't have to fight Danny Garcia. He didn't have to take on a challenge like that. He could have easily come back and fought somebody that we know he'll beat, like Sergey Lipinets or, you know, anybody, somebody even lesser than that. He came from an accident and a long layoff, man. And Errol Spence still fought a granite chin Danny Garcia, looked very sharp in doing so, broke him down even when the likes of Crawford and others said Errol was slurring or he was in a 50-50 fight with Danny Garcia and these different type of notions. And Errol did his thing. You see the picture on the screen. Shawn Porter fought a top guy in Ugas. He fought a top guy in Keith Thurman, top guy in Errol Spence, top guy in Danny Garcia, and Berto, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with Shawn. You know why? Because what he's saying, he's spitting. And I told you the same thing. The PBC is just what it is. As a business, they ran their business, produced some stars, and produced some interesting storylines. Crawford's the odd man out. So he could stay in his current situation, you know, be prideful, be loyal, or whatever is going on, and continue to get those fights and get reamed by the public. You know, have his promoter dissing him and saying and putting his business out there, I'm losing money on him, or he's going to be forced to go to the PBC. It's that simple. You know, if you have to get, like, that's any job. If you're working for a job that it used to be cool and they made a bunch of changes and it no longer fulfills, like they're making you work till midnight and you have kids and you can't really work till midnight, then you got to find a new job. Because when I first started this job, you know, the store closed at 9:30 p.m., which worked for your babysitting stuff. But if you have kids and they extend the hours, they say, hey, now we're open from 6 a.m. to midnight. And you're like, man, I'm not a night person. I can't work till no midnight. And they're trying to force you to work till midnight. Then obviously you've outgrown that situation. It's no longer the same situation as when you first joined it. And that's Terence Crawford. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section As always, hate, comment, and subscribe to the channel. ESPN Plus, use my link. ESPN Plus is $5.99 a month. Helps the channel continue to grow. $12.99 for the bundle. ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus. Give that a shot. Link in the description. We working. Let me know what you guys think. Should Terence Crawford explore other options? Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman? Drop me a comment. We working.